Chapter 21. The Thing Beneath the Roots. The ground did not shake this time, it exhaled, a slow, ancient breath rising from beneath the mountains. Zoro was upside down in a collapsed pantry searching for food when it happened. Found it. The entire sect tilted 10 degrees to the left. Bowls slid. Disciples screamed. Elder Han rolled downhill. Zoro fell out of the pantry roof and landed flat on his back. Ch-ch. The earth cracked, not from above, not from surface strain, from below. Massive fissures split open across the valley, revealing darkness that was not empty. Roots. Gigantic roots, thicker than mountains, pale and pulsing faintly with deep crimson veins. They were not trees, they were older. The saint's voice dropped to a whisper. The world root? Zoro blinked up at the massive root structure rising from the earth. That's a plant? No. Another breath rose from below. The roots shifted. The entire mountain range moved slightly to accommodate them. The sky dimmed as if instinctively wary. Zoro stood slowly. Feels like earlier. Yes, the saint said quietly, but deeper. A section of root split open vertically, not violently, deliberately. Inside, dark red light pulsed like a heartbeat. The storm core inside Zoro answered. 1 beat, 2, 3, in sync. Oi, he muttered. The ground beneath him liquefied briefly, then solidified again. A shape began forming within the open root cavity, not climbing out, growing out. Like a limb forming from wood, humanoid, tall, bare skin marked with root-like veins, hair long and dark red, drifting like it was underwater, eyes closed. When they opened, they were not silver, not void, deep crimson, ancient. It stepped forward barefoot onto broken earth. The roots behind it retracted slightly, but did not vanish. The saint did not kneel, but her aura dimmed instinctively. That is the root sovereign. Zoro scratched his cheek. Another sovereign? Not upper. Lower? No. The crimson-eyed being looked at Zoro calmly. It did not radiate pressure like the others, it radiated gravity. Everything leaned subtly toward it. You divide sky, it said softly. Its voice was like wood bending in slow wind. Zoro shrugged. Was in my way. You divide path. Didn't like it. You divide self. Annoying guy. The root sovereign tilted its head slightly. Stack, you are not growth. Zoro blinked. What? You do not extend upward. No. You do not root downward. No, you cut. Yeah. The crimson gaze sharpened slightly. And yet you remain. Zoro rolled his shoulder. Yeah. The roots beneath the earth shifted violently. Mountains bent inward toward the root sovereign. Rivers curved unnaturally toward its feet. The saint staggered slightly. It governs foundation. Zoro looked down. The ground beneath him was subtly pulling toward the crimson figure. Ch. The root sovereign raised one hand. The roots surged upward instantly, spiraling toward Zoro like spears made of living earth. He leapt back, tripped on tilted ground, fell sideways. The roots pierced where he had stood. Mid-fall, he spun and slashed upward. A thin black arc sliced through 3 massive roots at once. They did not bleed. They withered instantly where cut. The root sovereign's expression changed, just slightly. Interest. You sever foundation. Zoro landed in a crouch. You grabbed first. The roots shifted again, but this time slower. They circled him instead of striking directly. Testing distance, testing boundary. The storm core pulsed steadily. Not explosive. Calm. The root sovereign stepped forward once. The entire valley lowered slightly. You are fracture above. It gestured downward. I am foundation below. Zoro narrowed his eye. You want fight? No. Good. The roots surged again. Zoro clicked his tongue. That looks like fight. He dashed forward this time instead of backward. The roots curved to intercept, but he changed direction mid-step awkwardly. He slipped on a rising stone. The misstep shifted his angle unpredictably. The roots overcompensated. He sliced horizontally while off balance. A wide swath of spiraling roots severed at once. Withered sections collapsed into dust. The root sovereign did not move, but the crimson veins across its arms pulsed brighter. You do not follow pattern. Don't see signs. The roots retreated slightly. Not defeated. Recalculating. The saint watched carefully. It is not trying to destroy you. Zoro glanced briefly. Then what? The ground beneath him cracked again, but this time forming a circle. A massive circular platform of exposed root structure lifted upward, raising both Zoro and the root sovereign high above the valley floor. Isolation. The world below seemed smaller now. The root sovereign stepped closer, within arm's reach. You divide what presses. Yeah. You divide what binds. Yeah. Its crimson eyes locked onto his. Can you divide what holds you? Zoro frowned slightly. Huh? The storm core pulsed sharply. The mark on his chest burned. For a moment, he felt weight. Not from above, not from below, from within. Expectation, battle, endless cutting. The root sovereign extended one finger and tapped lightly against his chest directly over the storm core. The world froze, not time. Structure. Zoro felt something vast beneath his ribs, not the storm core. Deeper. An anchor. Something that tied him to direction, even when lost. Oi. Divide that, the root sovereign whispered. Zoro stepped back instinctively. Why? If you are fracture, then fracture fully. The crimson eyes did not challenge. They invited. The storm core pulsed harder. The saint's voice barely reached him from below. Zoro, do not destabilize your core. He looked down briefly, then back at the root sovereign. If I cut that, you will no longer be bound to any realm. Sounds. Chapter 21. The Thing Beneath the Roots. The ground did not shake this time. It exhaled, a slow, ancient breath rising from beneath the mountains. Zoro was upside down in a collapsed pantry searching for food when it happened. Found it. The entire sect tilted 10 degrees to the left. Bowls slid. Disciples screamed. Elder Han rolled downhill. Zoro fell out of the pantry roof and landed flat on his back. Ch-ch. The earth cracked, not from above, not from surface strain, from below. Massive fissures split open across the valley, revealing darkness that was not empty. Roots. Gigantic roots, thicker than mountains, pale and pulsing faintly with deep crimson veins. They were not trees. They were older. The saint's voice dropped to a whisper. The world root? Zoro blinked up at the massive root structure rising from the earth. That's a plant? No. Another breath rose from below. The roots shifted. The entire mountain range moved slightly to accommodate them. The sky dimmed as if instinctively wary. Zoro stood slowly. Feels like earlier. Yes, the saint said quietly, but deeper. A section of root split open vertically, not violently, deliberately. Inside, dark red light pulsed like a heartbeat. The storm core inside Zoro answered. 1 beat, 2, 3, in sync. Oi, he muttered. The ground beneath him liquefied briefly, then solidified again. A shape began forming within the open root cavity, not climbing out, growing out. Like a limb forming from wood, humanoid, tall, bare skin marked with root-like veins, hair long and dark red, drifting like it was underwater, eyes closed. When they opened, they were not silver, not void, deep crimson, ancient. It stepped forward barefoot onto broken earth. The roots behind it retracted slightly, but did not vanish. The saint did not kneel, but her aura dimmed instinctively. That is the root sovereign. Zoro scratched his cheek. Another sovereign? Not upper. Lower? No. The crimson-eyed being looked at Zoro calmly. It did not radiate pressure like the others. It radiated gravity. Everything leaned subtly toward it. You divide sky, it said softly. Its voice was like wood bending in slow wind. Zoro shrugged. Was in my way. You divide path. Didn't like it. You divide self. Annoying guy. The root sovereign tilted its head slightly. Sadak, you are not growth. Zoro blinked. What? You do not extend upward. No. You do not root downward. No, you cut. Yeah. The crimson gaze sharpened slightly. And yet you remain. Zoro rolled his shoulder. Yeah. The roots beneath the earth shifted violently. Mountains bent inward toward the root sovereign. Rivers curved unnaturally toward its feet. The saint staggered slightly. It governs foundation. Zoro looked down. The ground beneath him was subtly pulling toward the crimson figure. Ch. The root sovereign raised one hand. The roots surged upward instantly, spiraling toward Zoro like spears made of living earth. He leapt back, tripped on tilted ground, fell sideways. The roots pierced where he had stood. Mid-fall, he spun and slashed upward. A thin black arc sliced through 3 massive roots at once. They did not bleed. They withered instantly where cut. The root sovereign's expression changed, just slightly. Interest. You sever foundation. Zoro landed in a crouch. You grabbed first. The roots shifted again, but this time slower. They circled him instead of striking directly. Testing distance, testing boundary. The storm core pulsed steadily. Not explosive. Calm. The root sovereign stepped forward once. The entire valley lowered slightly. You are fracture above. It gestured downward. I am foundation below. Zoro narrowed his eye. You want fight? No. Good. The roots surged again. Zoro clicked his tongue. That looks like fight. He dashed forward this time instead of backward. The roots curved to intercept, but he changed direction mid-step awkwardly. He slipped on a rising stone. The misstep shifted his angle unpredictably. The roots overcompensated. He sliced horizontally while off balance. A wide swath of spiraling roots severed at once. Withered sections collapsed into dust. The root sovereign did not move, but the crimson veins across its arms pulsed brighter. You do not follow pattern. Don't see signs. The roots retreated slightly. Not defeated. Recalculating. The saint watched carefully. It is not trying to destroy you. Zoro glanced briefly. Then what? The ground beneath him cracked again, but this time forming a circle. A massive circular platform of exposed root structure lifted upward, raising both Zoro and the root sovereign high above the valley floor. Isolation. The world below seemed smaller now. The root sovereign stepped closer, within arm's reach. You divide what presses. Yeah. You divide what binds. Yeah. Its crimson eyes locked onto his. Can you divide what holds you? Zoro frowned slightly. Huh? The storm core pulsed sharply. The mark on his chest burned. For a moment, he felt weight. Not from above, not from below, from within. Expectation. Battle. Endless cutting. The root sovereign extended one finger and tapped lightly against his chest directly over the storm core. The world froze, not time. Structure. Zoro felt something vast beneath his ribs, not the storm core. Deeper. An anchor. Something that tied him to direction, even when lost. Oi. Divide that, the root sovereign whispered. Zoro stepped back instinctively. Why? If you are fracture, then fracture fully. The crimson eyes did not challenge. They invited. The storm core pulsed harder. The saint's voice barely reached him from below. Zoro, do not destabilize your core. He looked down briefly, then back at the root sovereign. If I cut that, you will no longer be bound to any realm. Sounds troublesome. The root sovereign's lips curved faintly. You are already troublesome, Zoro exhaled slowly. His hand moved to his sword. The black edge flickered faintly. The storm core roared once, then stabilized. He lifted the blade, pointed it at his own chest. The saint's eyes widened in horror. Zoro! The root sovereign did not move. Divide, it repeated softly. Zoro paused, scratched his head with the flat of the blade. No. Silence. The storm core settled instantly. The tension in the air broke. The roots beneath the platform stopped writhing. The root sovereign blinked once. Why? Zoro sheathed his sword. If I cut everything, nothing left to cut. The crimson gaze held him for a long moment. Then, the faintest smile. Correct. The platform lowered slowly back to the valley floor. The massive roots began retracting into the earth. The fissures sealed gradually. Before fully merging back into the ground, the root sovereign spoke one last time. You are not growth. Yeah. You are not foundation. Yeah. You are boundary. Zoro tilted his head. Sounds boring. The crimson eyes glinted faintly. It is not. The root sovereign dissolved into red threads of light that sank back into the earth. The valley stabilized completely. Wind returned. Mountains straightened. The saint approached slowly. You refused absolute fracture. Felt stupid. She studied him carefully. You are changing this world. Didn't mean to. You are teaching sky separation. Okay. You are teaching foundation restraint. Good. She stepped closer. You are becoming something neither above nor below can classify. Zoro looked around. Still can't find kitchen. She sighed. Far above, upper sovereigns felt the roots stir. Far below, the ancient darkness felt the foundation hesitate. And at the center, Zoro walked confidently forward. Turned left. Walked straight into a storage shed wall. Shh. Chapter 22. The Sky That Would Not Close. The hole in the sky never sealed. Days passed. Clouds drifted carefully around the clean vertical fracture Zoro had carved earlier. Rain refused to cross it. Light bent strangely near it. Birds avoided it completely. Zoro was sitting on the Sex Height's highest rooftop, chewing something questionably edible, staring at the split in the heavens. Still open. The saint stood behind him. Yes. You gonna fix it? No. Good. The sky trembled faintly. Not violently. Cautiously, like something testing a bruise. High above the visible layer of clouds beyond mortal sight, the fracture did not end. It continued upward, through atmosphere, through spiritual boundary, through the layered veil separating realms, and something on the other side was staring back. Zoro felt it first as a mild itch in his left shoulder. He scratched it. Annoying. The air pressure shifted. The clouds around the fracture began spiraling inward, not collapsing, but forming a slow vortex centered on the cut. The saint narrowed her eyes. They are observing. Who? Upper Sky Council. Zoro blinked. That sounds loud. It is. The vortex tightened. Lightning began forming around the fracture, but it did not strike downward. It hovered, waiting. Then the sky moved, not clouds, the sky itself, like fabric being pulled from behind. The fracture widened slightly. Just a hairline expansion. But enough. A single beam of pale white light descended slowly from the tier. It did not burn, it did not crackle, it simply existed. And wherever it touched, the air crystallized. A figure began descending within the beam. Not stepping, lowering. Tall, cloaked in white gold robes that shimmered like condensed daylight, long silver hair flowing without wind. Eyes closed. When they opened, they were not silver like the Void Sovereign. Not crimson like the Root Sovereign. They were pale gold, unblinking. The Saint's voice dropped to nearly nothing. The Arbiter of Continuance. Zoro tilted his head. Too many names. The beam of light touched the sect courtyard. The Arbiter's feet hovered inches above the stone. The crystallized air spread outward slowly from where it stood. The fracture above pulsed faintly in response. Its gaze locked onto Zoro instantly. You carved without petition. Zoro swallowed the last of whatever he was eating. Was in the way. You disrupted continuance. It was noisy. The golden eyes narrowed slightly. You refused root severance. Yeah. You refuse foundation. Yeah. You refuse ascension. Probably. Silence. The Arbiter stepped forward 1 inch. The ground did not shake. It aligned. Cracks in stone sealed. Crooked walls straightened. Bent swords realigned. Broken wood fused seamlessly. Zoro looked around. Oi. This realm remains unstable, the Arbiter stated calmly. Fractures propagate. Foundation hesitates. Sky bleeds. Sounds like your problem. The golden light intensified. The fracture above responded. It began slowly pulling inward. Closing. The cut Zoro made trembled as invisible force attempted to stitch it together. His storm core pulsed sharply in irritation. Don't. The Arbiter looked at him. You will not dictate continuance. Zoro stood slowly. You don't close my cut. The air tightened. The Saint stepped back carefully. The fracture above shrank another inch. The storm core inside Zoro roared once. He stepped forward and immediately tripped over a newly straightened tile, fell forward, instinctively grabbed his sword mid-fall, slashed upward. A black arc tore through the air, not aimed precisely, but angled wrong enough to avoid expectation. It struck the beam of descending light. For the first time, the beam flickered. The golden crystallized air shattered like glass around the cut. The fracture in the sky stopped closing. The Arbiter's eyes sharpened. You interfere with continuance. Zoro pushed himself upright. You interfere first. The Arbiter raised one hand. The golden beam intensified, then split. Instead of one descending column of light, thousands of thin golden threads shot downward from the fracture like stitching needles. They began sewing, across sky, across mountain lines, across spiritual flow. Reality attempted repair. Zoro looked up. That's annoying. He vanished, not by speed, not by technique. He stepped in the wrong direction, and ended up midair above the courtyard. The golden threads redirected instantly toward him. He twisted awkwardly in midair, cut diagonally. 3 threads severed. They dissolved instantly. He rotated again, unintentionally spinning. His second slash cut 15 more threads. The sky trembled violently. The fracture pulsed larger instead of smaller. The Arbiter extended both hands now. You are destabilization. Zoro landed roughly on a roof edge, slipped, fell again. While falling, he swung horizontally in irritation. A massive crescent arc exploded outward. Hundreds of golden threads were cut simultaneously. The vortex above destabilized. The fracture widened another inch. The Arbiter's beam flickered again. Its robes rippled for the first time. You act without sequence. Yeah, without petition. Yeah, without reverence. No reason. The golden eyes flashed brighter. You cannot remain unaligned. Zoro scratched his cheek. Why? Continuance requires direction. He paused. I don't have that. The storm core pulsed softly. Not violent, steady. The fracture above responded, widening slightly again. The Arbiter's gaze shifted briefly upward. You anchor instability. Root said I'm boundary. The golden eyes returned to him. Boundary implies separation. Yeah. Separation implies eventual collapse. Zoro tilted his head. You talk too much. The Arbiter lifted one finger. The entire golden beam compressed instantly into a single narrow lance of condensed light. It shot toward Zoro at impossible speed. He stepped left, but the tile shifted beneath him from earlier repairs. He slipped right instead. The lance missed by inches. It pierced the mountain behind him, silently erasing a perfect circular hole through stone and horizon. Zoro blinked. Oi. He appeared irritated now. He placed his hand on his sword again. The storm core did not roar this time. It hummed. Low. Calm. He inhaled slowly, exhaled. The fracture above widened by another inch on its own. The Arbiter's eyes widened faintly. You are not pushing. No. You are not pulling. No. You are allowing. Zoro shrugged. Feels better. The golden beam flickered again. For the first time, the Arbiter's feet lowered, touching the ground fully. The crystallized air stopped spreading. The sewing threads retracted slowly. The fracture above stabilized, still open, but no longer being forcibly closed. Silence filled the courtyard. Wind returned gently. The Arbiter studied him carefully. You will not ascend. No. You will not descend. No. You will not sever self. No. The golden eyes dimmed slightly. Then you remain between. Zoro looked up at the open sky cut. Yeah. The Arbiter lifted slowly back into the beam. This realm will adjust around you. Okay. If collapse begins, I'll cut it. The beam thinned. The figure rose toward the fracture. Before disappearing, the Arbiter spoke one last time. Boundary is not passive. Zoro scratched his head. Whatever. The beam vanished. The vortex dispersed. The fracture remained, unstitched, unhealed, open. The saint approached carefully. You have now opposed foundation and sky. Hungry. She stared at him. The upper council will not ignore this. They already loud. The wind blew softly across the courtyard. Far above, the fracture pulsed gently, not bleeding, not widening, simply existing. Zoro turned confidently toward what he assumed was the kitchen, walked straight off the roof, fell 3 floors, landed in a pile of repaired crates. Ch! Chapter 23. The Weight of Between. The sky did not close. It did not widen either. It simply remained, like an eye that refused to blink. 3 days passed. Nothing attacked, nothing descended, nothing rose, which, according to the saint, was worse. Zoro was lying flat on his back in the courtyard, staring up at the fracture. It's staring. Yes, you staring back? I am assessing. Same thing. The air felt heavier lately. Not crushing, just aware. Like the world was leaning slightly toward him. Disciples trained farther away from wherever he stood. Walls creaked when he passed. The repaired mountain behind the sect, the one the Arbiter accidentally erased, had not regrown. The hole remained perfectly circular, untouched, unhealed, unfixed. Zoro threw a pebble at it. It went through the hole. Neat. The saint folded her arms. You are becoming a center point. That bad? It means forces will stop testing from distance. So closer? Yes. As if summoned by the word, the ground beneath the courtyard shifted, not cracking, not rising, compressing. Gravity increased slightly. Zoro's cheek squished against the stone. Oi. The saint bent her knees immediately to compensate. Not sky. No, not root. Feels different. The air thickened like invisible water. Footsteps echoed, but not from any direction, from pressure. A figure appeared at the center of the courtyard, not descending, not rising. Condensing. Like space had decided to fold into shape. Tall, broad-shouldered, bare upper torso covered in faint geometric patterns, glowing dull iron gray. Hair short, eyes dark. No glow, no light, no aura. And yet, the entire courtyard felt heavier just because it stood there. The saint's expression hardened. The axis. Zoro rolled onto his side slowly. Another one? Yes. They travel in groups? No. The axis looked at Zoro without blinking. Its voice was low, dense. You are misalignment. Zoro yawned. You people dramatic. Sky bends around you. Yeah. Root hesitates beneath you. Yeah. Continuance stalls near you. Yeah. The axis stepped forward once. The stone beneath its foot compacted into a darker shade. You are not growth. Heard that. You are not foundation. Heard that. You are not alignment. Zoro sat up. What's that? Axis is alignment. The geometric patterns across its torso brightened slightly. The courtyard shifted, not visually, conceptually. Directions felt clearer. North felt north. Down felt heavier. Up felt defined. Zoro blinked. Weird. You distort orientation. Don't try. You exist without anchor. Root guy said boundary. The axis tilted its head slightly. Boundary requires sides. Yeah. You are not side. Zoro frowned slightly. Then what? Silence. The axis raised one hand. The pressure doubled instantly. Zoro's body pressed flat against the ground. Cracks formed beneath him. The saint braced herself but did not interfere. Alignment corrects deviation. Shh. Zoro's fingers twitched toward his sword. The storm core did not roar. It slowed. Heavy, matching the pressure. The fracture in the sky dimmed faintly. The roots deep underground shifted uneasily. The axis stepped closer. You will be oriented. Don't like that. The pressure intensified again. Stone around Zoro began fusing into smooth surface. Like he was being pressed into a mold. He closed his visible eye. Exhaled slowly. Fine. He stopped resisting. The pressure increased again, but something shifted. The more he relaxed, the less the pressure found leverage. The ground beneath him cracked unexpectedly, not from force, from absence. A small void formed beneath his back. The pressure slipped sideways. The axis paused. You are not resisting. No, you are not yielding. No. The storm core hummed softly. Not pushing upward, not rooting downward, simply existing. The pressure field around him bent, not shattered, not broken, bent around him like wind around a stone. The axis's geometric markings flickered, orientation failing. Zoro rolled lazily onto his stomach, pushed himself up slowly. The weight still pressed around him, but not on him. Feels heavy. It is. Hungry. The axis extended both arms. The entire courtyard compressed inward from all sides. Space tightened. Angles straightened. Zoro stepped forward, tripped over a compacted tile ridge, fell. As he fell, he drew his blade halfway, not fully unsheathed, just enough. The black edge grazed the compressed air. A thin, invisible seam formed through the pressure field. He hit the ground face first. Shh. The seam widened. The courtyard pressure split down the middle like fabric torn quietly. Half the weight collapsed to the left, half to the right. The axis staggered one step. The geometric patterns dimmed slightly. You divide axis. I divide stuff. You cannot divide orientation. Zoro stood slowly. Just did. The pressure tried to reassemble, but the seam he accidentally carved remained. The two halves of compressed space refused to align cleanly again. The axis's gaze sharpened. You create neutral. What? Not above. Yeah. Not below. Yeah. Not aligned. Okay. The axis lowered its arms slowly. The crushing weight faded. But the courtyard felt different, less directional, less absolute. The saint exhaled softly. You just altered spatial hierarchy. I fell. You split axis. Tile was uneven. The axis studied him long and hard. Boundary is not side. Zoro scratched his cheek. You too? Boundary is center. Silence. The fracture in the sky pulsed once. Deep underground, the world root shifted but did not rise. The axis continued. You are not between two. No, you are the line itself. Zoro blinked. That sounds annoying. The axis stepped backward. Its form began dissolving, not upward or downward. Outward, flattening into invisible geometry. This realm will stabilize around your line. Good. But if the line breaks, Zoro yawned, I'll cut it. The axis vanished completely. The courtyard stones relaxed. The air felt lighter. Directional certainty softened. The saint approached slowly. You are being classified. By who? All of them. Why? She looked up at the fracture in the sky, at the untouched hole in the mountain, at the quiet ground beneath them. Because you are forcing a new constant. Zoro looked around. Still can't find kitchen. She pointed behind him silently. He turned confidently. Walked straight into a pillar. The pillar cracked perfectly in half. Shh! Chapter 24, The Line That Casts No Shadow. The pillar did not fall. It remained split, perfectly divided. Two halves standing with a thin space between them. The space was not empty. It felt intentional. Zoro stared at it. Huh. The saint stepped closer but did not touch the divide. You are leaving seams. Didn't mean to. This one is stable. Zoro poked the air between the pillar halves. His finger passed through, but the light bent slightly around it. Weird. Above them, the sky fracture pulsed once. Below them, the ground settled deeper. Far away, something noticed. Not sky, not root, not axis. Something older than structure. Something that did not govern. It observed. Night fell unnaturally fast. No sunset, just dimming. The stars did not appear immediately. The sky above the fracture darkened first. Then the rest followed. Zoro was sitting on the steps, eating quietly. Lights broken. Yes, the saint said softly. The air grew still. Too still. No wind, no insects, no distant mountain echoes. Even the disciples had retreated indoors. Shadows lengthened, but none connected to Zoro. The saint noticed first. Look. Zoro looked down. The lantern beside him cast a clear shadow of the steps. of the pillar, of her, but not of him. He leaned left, no shadow, leaned right, nothing. Huh. The darkness near the split pillar thickened slightly, not rising, not spreading, deepening, like ink poured into water. The seam between the pillar halves widened a hair, not physically, conceptually. A thin vertical strip of absolute black formed within it. Zoro stood. Oi! The strip of black expanded upward and downward simultaneously, a vertical line of pure absence. No reflection, no glow, no pressure, just a line. The saint's voice was nearly breathless. That is not sky. No, not root. No, not axis. No. The line vibrated faintly, then stepped forward, not out. Forward. A silhouette separated from the black seam. Humanoid. Tall. Edges indistinct. Not darkness like night. Darkness like erased shape. Where its face should be, there was no feature, only smooth void. The lantern light bent away from it. The fracture in the sky dimmed slightly. Deep underground, the world root recoiled. The saint stepped back instinctively. Prime void. Zoro scratched his head. Void guy already came. This is not sovereign. Oh. The silhouette tilted its head. When it spoke, the sound did not travel through air. It appeared directly in awareness. You cast no shadow. Zoro blinked. Okay. You are unregistered by light. Don't care. You were cut. Yeah. You refused to cut self. Yeah. The void figure stepped closer. The ground did not react. The sky did not respond. The world did not acknowledge it. Only Zoro felt the temperature drop. You stand as line. People keep saying, line without reflection. Zoro frowned slightly. What's that mean? The void lifted one hand. The lantern flame beside them went out instantly. The courtyard darkened completely, except for the sky fracture faintly glowing above. In total darkness, Zoro still had no shadow. The void extended its hand toward his chest. Light refuses to define you. The storm core inside him pulsed once, slow, heavy. You exist without contrast. You talk like the others. I do not govern. Good, I erase. Zoro narrowed his eyes slightly. Erase what? The void's faceless gaze locked onto him. Undefined. Silence. The saint moved to intervene, but her body froze mid-step, not restrained, paused. Time did not stop, only decision. The void moved closer to Zoro. Within arm's reach. Sky stitches. Yeah, root anchors. Yeah, axis aligns. Yeah, I remove. Zoro's hand slowly moved toward his sword. Not urgent, just habit. The void's presence deepened. The fracture above flickered. If you remain uncast, the void whispered inside awareness, you will unmake distinction. That bad? Yes. Why? Without distinction, nothing separates. Zoro tilted his head. Sounds quiet. The void's form flickered slightly. You are not shadow. No. You are not light. No, you are not direction. No, you are not foundation. No, you are not alignment. No, you are not reflection. Zoro blinked. Hungry. The void paused. For the first time, it hesitated. You respond incorrectly? Don't know what correctly is. The void's hand moved faster. A sharp vertical slice of absolute black aimed directly at Zoro's chest. He stepped sideways, tripped over the split pillar edge, fell backward. The black slice missed by inches, struck the courtyard behind him, and erased a perfect vertical section of stone. Not cut, gone. The space remained, clean, silent. Zoro hit the ground. Oi. The void looked down at him. You cannot misstep forever. Been doing fine. Zoro swung upward from the ground without standing. His blade flashed black. The arc struck the void's torso, passed through, and continued into the sky. The fracture above widened a fraction. The void flickered violently, but did not split. You cannot cut absence. Zoro lay flat, staring upward. Didn't aim at you. The black arc he released continued upward, not cutting sky, not cutting cloud, but cutting the faint boundary between lantern light and total dark. A thin, luminous seam appeared across the courtyard. Light and darkness separated cleanly. The void turned slowly. You divide contrast. Guess. The courtyard was now clearly half lit and half dark, separated by a thin vertical line. The void stood on the dark side. Zoro lay on the lit side. The void tried stepping across. Its form distorted violently at the boundary. It stopped. You define through accident. Story of my life. The void's shape destabilized. The erased section of courtyard behind Zoro began trembling. Reality wanted to fill it, but could not decide how. The void stepped backward slowly toward the pillar seam. You remain uncast. Okay, but now contrast exists. Zoro blinked up at the divided courtyard. Oh. The void's final words echoed faintly. If you ever vanish your own line, everything will blur. Sounds messy. The void dissolved back into the vertical seam between the pillar halves. The seam shrank, then sealed. The lantern reignited softly. Shadows returned. Zoro finally cast one again. He looked down. There it is. The saint regained movement. She stared at the erased vertical section of courtyard. You forced void into contrast. Tripped. You created separation between light and dark. I was falling. She exhaled slowly. Sky could not define you. Root could not anchor you. Axis could not align you. Void could not erase you. Zoro rolled onto his side. Still hungry. Above them, the fracture in the sky pulsed softly, not bleeding, not closing, just watching. Deep below, the world root coiled tighter. In distant, unseen planes, forces that had not yet moved began stirring, because the line now cast a shadow, and shadows meant something could finally stand against it. Zoro stood confidently, turned toward what he believed was the kitchen, walked directly into the erased vertical gap in the courtyard, fell straight down into darkness. Titch! Chapter 25, The Depth That Had No Floor. Zoro did not hit the ground. He kept falling. The erased vertical gap was not deep. It was absent. Stone walls did not pass by him. Air did not rush around him. There was no sense of downward. Only continuation. Oi? His voice did not echo. It simply stopped existing a few inches from his mouth. The storm core pulsed once. Steady. He rotated slowly mid-fall. Or maybe the world rotated. There was no reference point. Above him, no light. Below him, no dark. Just a smooth, endless gray that was neither. This is annoying. He reached for his sword. The motion felt delayed, like intention had to travel before reaching his arm. He stopped moving, or thought he did. Nothing changed. Then, a sound. Not external, internal, like stone shifting under deep water. You stepped into unfinished space. Zoro blinked. Who now? The gray in front of him folded inward, not like cloth, like a page being creased. From that crease, a figure emerged. Not tall, not large, simple. Cloaked in dull stone-colored robes, barefoot, face visible, old, but not aged. Eyes deep brown, calm, no glow, no aura, no distortion. The figure stood on nothing. Zoro floated opposite. You are noisy, the figure said mildly. You talk normal. Yes. Good. The gray around them solidified slightly, not forming ground, forming pause. You cut sky. Yeah. You refused root. Yeah. You bent axis. Maybe. You defined contrast. By accident. The figure nodded. Yes. Zoro squinted slightly. You another sovereign? No. Good. I am what remains when forces disagree. Huh? The storm core pulsed softly. The gray space thickened slightly around Zoro's shoulders. You are currently in a gap. Fell. Yes, this gap was erased by Prime Void. Yeah. It was meant to stay erased. Didn't. The figure tilted its head slightly. You create persistence. Don't try. The gray space shifted. For the first time, Zoro felt something like ground brush against his foot, then vanish. You destabilize absolutes, the figure continued calmly, but you also prevent completion. Completion of what? Correction. Silence. Zoro scratched his cheek midair. You gonna fight? No. Good. I cannot fight you. Why? You are not within my structure. What structure? The gray folded again, this time forming faint lines, grids, extending infinitely in all directions. Like the framework of a building before walls. Balance, the figure said. Axis guy? No. Then, axis aligns what exists. The grid brightened slightly. I stabilize what is broken. Zoro blinked. You look like janitor. The figure considered this. That is acceptable. Zoro drifted slightly left, or the grid shifted right, hard to tell. You fell into a removed correction, the figure explained. Prime Void erased space to remove undefined variable. Me? Yes. Rude. The erased section was not meant to contain you. Still here. Yes. Silence. The storm core pulsed again. The grid lines near Zoro wavered faintly. The figure watched carefully. You are not heavy, it observed. Okay. You are not light. Okay. You are not anchored. Okay. You are not misaligned. Okay. You are not absent. Okay. The figure paused. You are persistent. Zoro tilted his head. That good? It is inconvenient. Heard that before. The gray grid trembled slightly. Far above, the fracture in the sky flickered. Far below, the world root tightened, even deeper. Something old shifted once in recognition. The janitor figure raised one hand. The erased gap around Zoro began narrowing, not closing violently, compressing gently. You cannot remain here, it said calmly. Why? This space has no resolution. Sounds peaceful. It is incomplete. I'm fine. The compression increased. Zoro felt his shoulders brush something solid for the first time. Invisible walls forming. You force systems to adapt, the figure continued. But this space has no system. Then make one. Silence. The figure studied him long. You suggest creation. You look bored. The grid flickered more intensely now. The erased vertical line above, the one connecting to the courtyard, faintly shimmered. It was trying to reattach, but did not know how. The figure sighed softly. I am stabilizer. Okay. I prevent collapse. Good job. I prevent expansion. Bad job. The figure's brow twitched faintly. You are expanding. Falling. The compression tightened again. The walls nearly touched his arms now. The storm core hummed, not loudly, just steady. The walls stopped moving. The grid bent slightly outward around him. The stabilizer froze. You are not resisting. No. You are not yielding. No. The grid lines around him curved like reeds around a rock in water. The compression dissolved. The erased gap widened instead, not violently, naturally, like space had decided to accommodate him. The stabilizer stared. You are generating structure. Huh? The gray beneath Zoro's feet solidified. A thin line formed, horizontal, then vertical, across, then extended outward, forming a small platform. Simple, stable. The first true surface inside erased space. Zoro landed on it casually. Oh. The stabilizer looked down at the platform, then at Zoro. You created ground. Didn't try. You do not dominate. No, you do not erase. No, you do not align. No, you do not anchor. No, you remain. Zoro scratched his head. Yeah. The erased vertical line above them shimmered brighter. It found something to attach to. The platform extended upward in a thin path, reconnecting toward the courtyard. The gap was no longer absence. It was corridor. The stabilizer's eyes softened slightly. You convert deletion into threshold. Sounds complicated. It is. The gray grid slowly faded, not collapsing, integrating. The stabilizer stepped back. This space now exists. Okay. You should leave. Hungry. Yes. The corridor extended fully upward. Zoro looked at it. Stairs would be nice. The corridor formed faint steps instantly. The stabilizer blinked once. Oh. Zoro began walking upward confidently. Took 3 steps, turned wrong direction, walked into gray wall. The wall shifted aside politely. Shh. The stabilizer watched him ascend, murmured quietly to itself, he does not fracture. He does not dominate. He does not vanish. He persists. Above, the courtyard stones trembled slightly. The erased vertical gap shimmered. Then, a hand reached out from within it. Zoro climbed back up casually, covered in faint gray dust. I fell. The saint stared at the now perfectly shaped vertical corridor embedded in the courtyard. That was erased space. Not anymore. She looked down into the corridor. It no longer felt wrong. It felt like a doorway. A thin, stable passage descending into something undefined. You built threshold from void, she said quietly. Tripped. Far above, the fracture in the sky pulsed brighter. Far below, the world route shifted uneasily. In distant planes, sky, route, axis, void, all paused. Because something unprecedented had happened. Erasure had become passage. And the line was no longer just dividing, it was connecting. Zoro dusted off his clothes, looked around. Kitchen? The saint slowly pointed left. He nodded confidently, walked right, and disappeared down the newly formed void corridor again.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next video.